Good Tuesday morning out there, everybody. Hope everybody's having a great start to their work week. In this video, I will be talking to you guys about your fall and winter weather outlook update, as well as your tropical weather update in this video. If you guys are new to the channel, if you guys have not yet subscribed down below, definitely press that subscribe button down below, as well as the like button. It's all free to do. All you got to do is press the like button, which is the thumbs up button, and the subscribe button, and you get daily weather forecast updates and climate weather forecast updates in this video and also on the channel. So definitely thank you guys so much for joining me here this morning. Right now we are seeing the Nino index yet again. This is actually, we are in a La Nina. We're in a moderate La Nina right now. And actually just the past couple of days, we actually started to weaken the La Nina ever so slightly. Still in a moderate La Nina, but we have turned back towards, towards the trek, towards a stronger La Nina, the past couple of days. And we're getting closer toward a strong La Nina. We're still a little ways away, but again, it is strengthening back, and you can see that with the colder waters over the equatorial Pacific, all these blue shaded areas right off the west coast of South America over the equator. That is the La Nina in place south of Hawaii and portions there of the Central Pacific. And we have these bursts of some cooler waters here. You can see the darker blue showing up. That is the strengthening La Nina at times, so definitely we'll continue to watch that as we go through the fall and the winter months ahead. So as we get into the September, I know September is just a few days away. Right now, kind of looking at the upper air heights, kind of looking at the upper levels of the atmosphere, you can see more of a zonal flow for the most part across much of September. I'm sure we'll have some troughs kind of coming down from the Aleutian Islands, coming down from the Pacific Northwest into the Midwest, the Ohio Valley, and parts of the northern United States, bringing potentially some severe weather and maybe some of those frontal boundaries bringing some heavy rainfall in September. But looking at the temperature aspects of this, we are seeing some warmer temperatures probably expected, especially across the western United States, with the ridging continuing to hang on across these areas during the month of September. But as we look at the precipitation anomaly for September, it does look largely drier, slightly drier than normal across the Midwest, the upper Midwest, getting into portions of the northern Rockies and the Pacific Northwest. Now you do see some greens showing up along the Gulf Coast and the East Coast and into Florida here. That is, above normal precipitation anomaly showing up for September. That could be linked to maybe some tropical weather we have to watch across the Gulf Coast and the Western Atlantic. I do think, the tropical weather season is really going to pick up in a big way, especially early on in the month here in September, and carry us probably all the way through the rest of the month as well. There are going to be some anomalies across southwestern Canada with some precipitation there, with kind of some troughing, like I said, dropping down from portions of the Aleutian Islands into the Pacific Northwest during September, and that could bring some cold frontal boundaries through some of these areas like the upper Midwest and the Ohio Valley from time to time, but largely a drier month for New England and just really much of the northern United States. We kind of have more of an El Nino type of pattern in place during the September month as we move into September. And you can see this here by the Climate Prediction Center's forecast, their monthly temperature outlook for September of 2022. You do see the ridging across southwestern United States here, with above normal temperatures favored largely across Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico, much of the Four Corners region there. Some above normal temperatures expected across portions of New England and Florida, so we'll continue to watch that. And with some of the troughs hanging around across portions of Alaska, the Aleutian Islands, and western Canada, bringing some cold fronts down across the Pacific Northwest. From time to time, we could have some below normal temperatures favored across eastern Alaska, but largely just equal chances of above or below normal temperatures during that time frame across those areas. Looking here at the precipitation, again, we will have below normal precipitation across the upper Midwest and portions of the West here as well. There will be times of some rainfall, so again, just because you see below normal precipitation here for September does not mean you're going to see completely rain-free time the entire month. It just means largely, if you look at the entire month, all 30 days, average them out, and you have below normal precipitation favored for portions there of the upper Midwest, the Rockies getting back towards California. We still have a little bit of the monsoon season to go across portions of Arizona. Like I said, a little bit of some active weather up toward Washington State, into British Columbia, into southwestern Canada there. And then along the Gulf Coast, look at, like I said, guys, we're seeing above normal precipitation favored along the Gulf Coast from coastal Texas all the way eastward to coastal Georgia and Louisiana, and a lot of these areas above normal precipitation, which means that the tropical weather season will be picking up in a big way as we head into September. But as we go a little bit farther into the fall months, guys, into October, we have largely that same pattern still kind of in place. We got more of these cold fronts dropping south with some cooler air. As you guys know, that October starts to cool off a little bit. You can see some bluer anomalies on the heights here showing up across eastern Alaska. Some cold fronts may drop down into the Rockies, maybe getting into the upper Midwest during this time frame. And again, that's why we see these anomalies showing up across British Columbia, Alberta, getting into northwestern portions of the United States. Some of these cold fronts dropping down in October could provide for some colder rains across some of these areas. Largely the United States as a whole, across the central and southern plains, the Ohio Valley, the Tennessee Valley, and the East Coast, for the most part in October will be slightly below normal for precipitation across the month of October. There will be times of some active weather. We have, you can see the Gulf here lighting up in those green colors. We could be talking about some tropical storms, some hurricanes there, potentially into October and maybe along the western Atlantic. We might have to watch this in the Caribbean. We might have to watch this all up and down the East Coast from Florida to Maine in October, but that is something we'll watch. But largely the United States and southern Canada as a whole in October will be slightly below normal with precipitation. Fairly active across the Pacific Northwest, though, and that's what we'll have to watch. Moving into November, it gets a little bit more interesting here. We have more anomalies showing up with more stronger troughing across the Aleutian Islands and portions of Western Canada, which will send even stronger cold fronts southward, while we do have ridging, kind of a blocking pattern a little bit here across portions of the western United States. Sometimes we get these patterns in November where we kind of have some blocking and some warmth across the western United States. There will be some cooler times across the eastern United States with some troughing across the Great Lakes and eastern United States in November. And with that, we'll see mainly drier conditions. There will be an active period of weather across much of southern and central Canada. I think in November, I think British Columbia and the Pacific Northwest will be pretty active in November, especially into the middle and end of November, across portions of Quebec, getting into Ontario. We could have some early snowfall there potentially. As we get into portions of the Gulf Coast, the southeast and east coast here of the United States in November, looks drier than normal here with that, classic La Nina pattern in place where we have drier conditions across the southern United States and kind of neutral to a little bit, wetter conditions across the northern United States as we get into November. The hurricane season will still be there across the Caribbean here with these green anomalies showing up and across the western Atlantic. We'll have to watch here as we go into November as well. So that will be something to keep an eye on. But as we move into December, this is all we'll have to start really watching for the polar vortex and start watching for these stratospheric warming events here across the northern hemisphere. This is kind of a northern hemispheric look here, and you can definitely see these bluer anomalies starting to show up across Alaska and much of Canada and the Arctic here, and that is the start of what could be a very cold and snowy winter across much of the northern U.S. As we kind of start the month and end the month of December as well. We'll start to see more of these stratospheric warming events potentially as early as December as we get into the Arctic and parts of Canada here in Alaska as we move into especially I think toward the Christmas time frame here in the really late December. We'll start to see this more and more, and you can kind of look at this on the view of North America. You can see the cooler anomalies showing up here across portions of Alaska, much of west central and portions of Canada there, and maybe kind of nudging its way down towards the international border between Canada and the United States in December. Largely, I do think we'll still have some very warm conditions for December standards across the four corners where we have the drought ongoing. We'll have warmer conditions. Drier ground warms up a lot faster, and I think we'll have some ridging across the western and southwestern United States. There will be an active storm track in December. Across the Pacific Northwest, we'll have some cold fronts dropping down and kind of a polar jet that will bring some precipitation and some higher precipitable water values across the Pacific Northwest. Maybe some snowfall there, and even some rainfall. We'll continue to watch that. There is some anomaly showing up across the upper Midwest and upper Great Lakes. We could have an early snowfall there as well, with maybe a couple of snowstorms as early as December. I think it'll be early for snowfall across the New England region as well in December here, but look at a classic La Nina pattern in December does look to be in place with drier than normal conditions across the southern and southeastern United States. Much of the East Coast will be pretty dry, in exception to the New England region, where again we could be having some early snowstorms potentially into December, so that is something to watch. But as we turn the page to the 2023 season here towards January, it gets pretty interesting. You can see the stratospheric warming event here, at least on this model, does show up a little bit stronger into January. We have a lot of these cooler anomalies filtering down into western Canada here, stronger troughing here across portions of the Aleutian Islands, while we do have a spike with ridging here just to the west or maybe southwest of the Aleutian Islands. That will be important to kind of maybe seeing if we can get some of this stronger Arctic air to kind of move southward toward the northern plains and the upper Midwest in January. That is possible. We could have some colder temperatures across portions of the northern Rockies, the northern plains, and the upper Midwest in January, and this could be the start of what could be a very cold end of winter as we move into the 2023 season here in January and potentially even into February as well. But yeah, still some ridging across the southwestern United States. We might be seeing some positive PNA values, which is the Pacific North American oscillation, stuff like that. That when you have positive values like that across the southwestern United States and the eastern Pacific, usually that sends a colder, colder air across portions of the northern U.S. So that'll be something to watch in January. And looking at that as well looks pretty interesting. We could have some very cold air meeting up with some very higher end precipitation values here across the Great Lakes, the Midwest and the Ohio Valley, and even New England into January. It looks very snowy potentially across portions of New England, Ontario, Quebec, Canada, getting all the way down into the Midwest and Great Lakes, maybe even getting back into the Missouri Valley in January. Looks very busy for lots of snowstorm potential there, especially if we can get some colder air from the Arctic with that polar vortex starting to push a little farther south. Very active across the Pacific Northwest, but again, the southern United States, very classic La Nina pattern continues from portions of California to Texas to Florida and portions of the Carolinas. Very dry into January. Yeah, there'll still be some rainfall on the warmer end of these storms, but I do think largely it'll be drier than normal across these areas in January. And really February is when I'm thinking we're going to have the polar vortex really start to move south, I think, and kind of move into the northern and northwestern United States in February. We have a very big spike of ridging across the Aleutian Islands, and this is a classic La Nina pattern with potentially a very strong, polar vortex air moving southward, very strong Arctic air moving into the northern Rockies, the northern plains, and potentially all the way south to the Texas Panhandle into February of 2023. And you can look at that here. We have that spike in that ridge, across the Aleutian Islands, according to this model, which would actually, if that does occur, would send an Arctic, one of these lobes of Arctic air southward, and the polar vortex could actually split into one or two pieces and actually send it southward toward the northwestern and northern United States. And it is possible that if it's strong enough, it could actually go down as far south as the Texas Panhandle and the southern United States. So that is something to watch in February. And again, it looks drier than normal across the southern U.S., but there still will be some active periods with some snowy weather across the northern U.S. and southeastern Canada as this potentially moves southward into February. And again, like we saw this past winter, this could stick around into March as well. We could have some colder weather into March across much of Canada, the northern U.S., with potentially some polar vortex type of weather moving across this area with some colder Arctic intrusions with some colder weather and even some snowfall as well into March. Very active with snowfall, again, potentially across Ontario, Quebec, New England, getting down to the Ohio Valley into March. And again, very dry from California to Texas, A little bit drier, I think, across the Great Plains into March and over towards Florida as well. I think the more of the active weather will be across the eastern and northeastern U.S. as we get into March of 2023. So that's kind of your fall and winter weather outlook update. I think, I think things will be changing a little bit between now and then, but that's kind of giving you a rough idea of what we can expect through the next several months out there. So I do hope that is very valuable, very informative information for you guys to, show you what you can expect as we get into that time frame. But now turning your attention to the tropics, we got some active weather here in the now right now. We have actually an 80% chance in the next 5 days of a tropical system developing here just to the east or northeast of the Windward Islands here, and then another kind of medium chance of 40 to 50% chance of development just off the coast of Africa here in the Atlantic Ocean. And we actually do have a very active pattern even in the Eastern Pacific. So while we have some systems that could be developing in the Atlantic, we got systems that could be developing here in the Eastern Pacific. We got a 40 to 50% chance of development here in the Eastern Pacific, just off the west coast of Mexico and south of the Baja of California, and then another lower end chance of about a 20% chance or so of development south of the Mexican coast here and west of the Central Americas, with an area of interest there as well by the National Hurricane Center. So we'll continue to watch that. Looking first at the Atlantic, the Caribbean, and the Gulf here. Looking at the system here, we have the area of an 80% chance of development. You can see some robust convection, some robust thunderstorm activity across this area. That'll continue to move its way to the north and west over the next several days, largely potentially just east or northeast of the Windward Islands, but we'll have to keep an eye on that here if you live in the Lesser Antilles. And then that other system to the, coming off the African coast that we'll have to keep an eye on has a decent chance of developing in the next 5 to 10 days. That will be moving its way to the west-northwest as well, with some kind of loosely organized convection and thunderstorm activity now, but it could be organizing a little bit stronger as it reaches over the open waters in the next several days. Looking at the Eastern Pacific Basin here, we can see some kind of loosely organized activity right now. Again, this will be organizing as well. It's over the open waters. This will continue to organize as it pushes to the north and west, and then we're watching the area of investigation there of a lower probability right now of development just coming off the Central Americas. That could also be another system. So we could have two systems in the Atlantic and potentially two systems in the Pacific to keep an eye on. So very busy tropics, that is for sure. So again, looking back over at the Atlantic side here with the Gulf, the Caribbean, and the Atlantic Ocean, this is the European ensemble here, and you can definitely see some very active weather coming off of Africa here, and we have one and maybe two systems here moving across portions of the southern Atlantic Basin as we go through the end of August here. As we get towards this coming weekend into early next week, one of these systems might make its way north of the Windward Islands and potentially find itself eventually in the western Atlantic, closer toward the Bahamas. So we'll continue to have to watch this as we go through the next week or two, because this is looking like potentially getting pretty close to the Bahamas and pretty close to the Greater Antilles here as we get toward this weekend and even into early next week. And then potentially got to watch that system behind it right on its heels there. If it develops further, that could be pushing west or northwestward as well. So it's a little uncertain of where these systems do go, but there is growing potential that, there's going to be systems out there. So we'll have to watch that as we get especially into this weekend and early next week. So breaking down all the weather models as we get into this, as we get into late this weekend and early next week, the GFS is showing a 985 millibar low pressure center, which would actually characterize that as probably a hurricane, at least a category 1 or 2 hurricane potentially on the GFS model here to the north of the Greater and Lesser Antilles here, getting closer to the Bahamas. We'll watch that. And actually, remarkably, the European forecast model is pretty similar in the track as well. However, it's a lot less strong. It's a lot weaker with this. It's a lot less strong than the GFS, the American model. So that is pretty interesting. Also is the Canadian model, the GEM or the CMC. This is actually a lot weaker as well. It does kind of agree with the European forecast model. It's not going to become a strong storm, so we'll continue to watch that. But then the ICON model kind of meets in the middle a little bit, says, hey, no, there's going to be a 992 millibar low. So there are agreements on the track of this potentially a little bit more than the strength of this. So we'll continue to watch this. The strength does vary, but the track is looking pretty good right now. It looks like it'll go mainly north of the Windward Islands and north of the Greater Antilles, but after that, if it moves into the Bahamas or Florida, or even just moving away from the United States and kind of curls up the East Coast here, that is unknown right now, so we'll continue to watch that as we get a little bit farther ahead. But looking here at the Eastern Pacific Basin, we got that system as we move into late this week, as we turn the page to September here into Thursday, September 1st. Potentially a tropical depression forming here just off the coast of Mexico and south of the Baja of California as we head into Thursday. This could continue to be probably a tropical depression during that time frame. The GFS, the European forecast model, do forecast that. The CMC is a little bit stronger. I do consider this model an outlier. It does have kind of a stronger, maybe tropical storm and a lot closer to the land here. Again, you can't count this out. It's still a weather model, but I do think this is a little bit of an outlier. It's a lot stronger than a lot of the other models that I've been looking at have. And even the Icon model kind of keeps this as a kind of an open wave or just a tropical depression as we kind of move in towards this late this week and into this upcoming weekend. So thank you guys for watching my video. I definitely hope that was very valuable information, very informative for you guys. Stay safe out there with all the tropics. And again, we'll be updating you guys on the fall and winter weather outlook in the days, months, and the time ahead. So we'll definitely continue to update you guys on that. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Remember to like it by pressing that thumbs up button down below. Leave any comments, questions, and concerns below as well, and your thoughts on the fall and winter weather. Definitely would like to hear those as well. And again, subscribe to the YouTube channel, guys. Subscribe down below. It's free to do, and I definitely appreciate it, guys. Our goal is 1,000 subscribers, guys. So thank you guys so much for all the new subscribers out there, and I definitely appreciate it. Have a great Tuesday and great rest of your week, everybody, and I'll see you all in the next video.